dun. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another awesome show lined up for you here today. But before I go anywhere into that, just want to remind everybody, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way, every day when we go live, you know about it, and then you can watch and ask questions and be a part of The Collective. So we have two brand new guests that have never been on The Collective before. We got Clay, who is former Recon Marine, former Green Beret, and just all-around awesome dude who is also a shooter competitor.
Awesome.
Used to be. Yeah, former competitive shooter.
And yeah, looking forward to him and I just chatted this morning. Really good time. I'm looking forward to getting into it was actually his topic that we're going to get into today too. So it's gonna be good times. Jason, 8 years in the OPP, and I keep pointing like my mirror is reversed, but whatever. You're in here somewhere. Years of policing. And is it your own ranch? You've been around horses quite a bit, or is it somebody else's ranch that you're around?
Yeah, my wife and I bought a farm a couple of years ago, so we have a horse boarding operation, and when we also run a small farm.
Wicked. So that's
awesome.
And then Shaun, obviously, Jason, you know Shaun, right? You've been talking for a while.
Yeah, I don't know how we crossed paths, but I guess it was just two cool dudes out in the ether.
We cross paths because sometimes the universe does good things.
The interwebs.
Yeah.
When it works, it works.
I just got to say something weird because I've never done this before. I don't know where to look. I feel like if I'm looking here, it's not where Shaun is, and if I'm looking at Clay, it's. Anyways, don't mind my eyes.
I'm gonna play with this a little bit, but
okay. I'll say this, Jason, and to your point, I suffered this same malady myself, and if you watch any of my any of these collectives where we've got people, you'll see my eyes constantly moving back and forth. Always, it's like it's not that I'm scanning for targets.
Yeah,
I'm scanning for data. I'm looking for details. I'm looking for feedback loops. I'm looking for nuance. And so my eyes are constantly scanning the panel and scanning me and trying to figure out, do I look like the fool or do they look like the fool? Just teasing.
Yes.
And so my eyes are constantly moving in these sort of formats. It's normal for me, so maybe it'll be normal for you.
Not only that, I like to play around with the screens. So
perfect.
We'll be dancing between here, and I'll be highlighting people, and there's going to be all kinds of stuff. So, oh, look at that. Alan's watching. What's up, Alan?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Alan.
There you go. Yeah. So any thoughts, any questions, anything burning on the top of your guys' brains before we dive into our topic of the day?
Shoot.
Everybody's good. All right, let's rock and roll. Boom. Talk about hard transitions right there. So what we're going to be talking about, I asked Clay earlier if there was anything that he, wanted to talk about or discuss, and the thing he brought up was hard transitions. So going from not only you've seen this in the military, I'm sure you've seen this in the policing world. Somebody gets injured and their career's done. Now we're over. Athletes as well. Anybody that is, you work really hard to get somewhere, and then it's over. And so it's not like a drawn out, I'm going to retire and I'm going to do this transition and I'm going to work through, rehab programs, or I'm going to do some sort of transitory thing. It's just game on. Now what? And so I want to talk about that because that's something that we've discussed the general transition, but we've never really gotten into this particular subject. Any thoughts on it right away off the top of your head? Who wants to jump in?
I can go real quick just to establish not a framework, but at least start the conversation, maybe in a little bit of a different way as well, because what I'm going to discuss is not my military career, but is my racing career. So quick recap, I coached high-performance athletes all around the world for 15 years in ultra-endurance racing predominantly, but I also coached road and mountain bike and shorties like, 1 hour races, 4 hour races, 6 hour races, short races. But my main focus was 24-hour solo mountain bike racing. And I think I was pretty good at it. I did 30 24-hour solos myself, and I was a world champion at one point. And so I was a pretty good racer. And so at some point you start identifying with what you're doing, and you start labeling yourself as, oh, look at me go. I'm an ultra endurance world champion and I'm pretty good at it and I kind of dig it. And this is what I'm going to do for a long time. And then I blew my ACL on the mats, on the BJJ mats, torched my knee. And I was like, wow, that sucks, because now I won't be a world champion anymore. And so as I was in that moment, all of the things go through your head. Oh, this is the ripple on effect. This is the ripple on effect. This is the ripple on effect. I realized that once I moved through my little boo-boo moment that day, I realized I was going to have to recreate myself, reshape myself, because now I couldn't like be all that I could be on a bike. The bike was now going to become a training tool. It was now going to not be relegated to secondary or, put it on a dusty shelf. It's still a big part of my life. I just had to figure out how to manipulate it so it could still be a big part of my life. But I realized I'd never be a world champion again. And so the process of the mental transition is usually the hardest for me, kind of giving up what I'd just crushed out and realizing that, oh, I'm back to clean slate again, or day one again on whatever new thing I'm going to take on. It's difficult at first, but once you go through enough hard transitions, it's not that I shrug my shoulders and think, you know what? That sucks. But tomorrow I'm going to myself into an entirely different new thing, which I'm a lot better at nowadays. But you've got to kind of go through some hard transitions before you get good at hard transitions, is what I would say as an opener.
That's a great point. Clay, you got any thoughts?
No, that's fantastic. Actually, the reason that this came up when we were talking about my perspective on the hard transitions actually came from the fact that I was medically retired from the Army. So I didn't want out. I was retired at 15 years, which is about 5 years early for those of us in the U.S. military. And my point with that was the first hard transition I'd ever had to do that wasn't by choice. Now, I'd made some hard transitions before. I changed services, which is a weird deal for us, at least, to go from our Marine Corps to our Army or our Air Force, something like that. That didn't really change like the jobs I was doing either, though. It was still military stuff and commando guide nonsense or whatever. That the one with the injury, that one was that was the first like wake up of you don't have a choice and this is what's happening, and it was actually really hard to take, and it took I think for me a long time to get over. And even at that, you look back at it, I didn't have it as bad as some guys do. I'm not paralyzed. I still got all my legs and arms and stuff. I have other friends over the years that have woken up in a hospital missing both legs, and their career's over too. Like whatever they were, whatever identity they had, they're still that guy, but they're not doing it anymore. And that's kind of where this line of discussion came from.
Yeah, absolutely. Any quick early thoughts on it, Jason?
Yeah, I can jump in because I'm kind of going through that myself right now. And it's part of the reason why I find myself on Instagram connecting with people. So at about the year 6 mark in my policing career, I had an incident that kind of stuck with me. And so I've been fighting and in denial of PTSD symptoms for many years. And without going into the whole story, I'm at a point now with 19 years on where I have a fear or a realization that I probably won't ever suit up and put my uniform on ever again. That for self-preservation reasons and to move forward in a healthy way so that I'm a good husband and a good father, I have to make a hard decision coming up. And it's tough because you guys know, being in the military, you're really married to this kind of career, right?
Right.
So I've said this before. It's kind of like if you remember the Spider-Man movie where he ends up getting like the Venom suit. And when he realizes that it's no good for him anymore, it's like this monumental challenge to pull the suit off of him. And so, like we really interweave our life around a job like this, especially like a high profile job. Like I'm sitting with, guys that are Rangers and tier 1 operators and stuff, and I'm a policeman. So I can only imagine just how challenging it could be for somebody else who's dedicated a lot more of their life to something. And I feel that, and I don't know where I'm going, but it feels like there's a bit of a protection mode that I'm in. And trying to think of the future without the rest of my career as part of it is a real difficult situation for me, because it's like a death of part of me, you know. It's like a death of a persona or a character in my life that has been, well, almost 20 years of my life. That's half my life, right? So it's a big challenge.
No doubt. I got medically released from the military as well, but I had a bit more. I was planning to get out ahead of time, and then when I did my medical release, they were like, "Oh yeah, you are broken. Let's get you sorted out." But I think the biggest issue, at least for me, was I kind of forgot that it was going to end at some point. Right? Like every career that you get into, you know, like you can't spend the rest of your life. Well, some people have spent the rest of their life in uniform, don't get me wrong. But when you initially get in, I was thinking, oh yeah, 25 years, I'll be like 48 when I get out. I'll have a pension. Perfect. Be good to go. No worries. And then over the years of going through the time in, when you kind of marry yourself to that uniform, you forget that that's going to end at some point. And then I think that's where why that transition is so hard, because we're not really accepting the fact that we're leaving it. Even eventually, we've just kind of like, this is every day. This is right. Like it doesn't really change.
I'd like to throw something in.
Absolutely.
This might be directed a little bit more to Jason than to anyone else, or it might be directed to all of us. I'll just throw it out. So hard transitions are hard, of course, but I find that, at least for me, and through talking with a lot of people and observing or working with a lot of people as athletes, etc., a lot of people create a label or an identification of this is what I am, and it gets crazy glued onto their chest. And that category of people who just stick to the label really struggle hard in a transition. Now, I look at Jason, and I've only recently started following him on IG. And here's the good news. Dude is smart as he's a sharp guy and a thoughtful guy. And as I see it, an intellectual who will easily move into the next transition, whatever it might be, because he's got all of the wherewithal to slip into that. And the moment that he slips into that next transition, he's going to smash it. The trick is, if you haven't slipped into a transition recently, or you haven't ever gone through one before, the hesitation is the unknown. But I look at Jason and I know he's got it. Like that will be a non-factor. It's stepping into the unknown void that messes with our little peanut. And I've just stepped into enough voids. This is we'll call podcasting my 7th career. Wow, what a lame career. But my 7th career, I've transitioned enough through enough careers, and not easy careers, challenging careers, notable careers, I would say. I've done it enough that I know it's easily doable for a guy like me, and for a guy like you, and for a guy like you, and for a guy like you. It's easy for all of us. Honestly, the challenge is believing in yourself and how much easier it will be than what we think we've built it up to be. And that is, it's going to be oh so hard. It might be hard for some, but it ain't going to be hard for you, Jason.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's a great point. Go ahead.
I was going to say, sticking with that, with Shaun's point there, I think what I learned myself from the one that I went through, what really got me out of that, depressed kind of bad thinking about it was exactly that. It was thinking about this as an opportunity to grow and be something else, and take a look at that like core idea, like who am I? Am I a soldier guy? Like, okay, I can be that too, but I'm this other thing. I'm clay. That's my job. My job is to be clay. And really looking at that as an opportunity for growth and to walk down some different roads is one of the things that helped me, kind of put that away, put that in the past. And that was great. That stuff is all cool. But now I'm going to do some other cool stuff. And that's part of the outlook that I think you have to have.
Yeah. Well, I'll add to that point, Clay. I think that's probably the primary point. If you're doing a hard transition, is you still have to be you, right?
Right.
You just have to recognize that you're not dissociating you from you. You're just kind of orienting yourself like an arrow at a little bit of a different direction. You're still you doing that. You're still you moving forward. It's still you taking the steps. It's just that there was a part of you that is now going to be either a memory or a, something else. It's still always going to be there as part of you. You're going to take it with you. It's just that you're going to, put on a new jacket or a new pair of shoes when you go forward. And you have to bring you with it. You can't bring something completely different. And Shaun was talking about hard transitions in a way with his live earlier. And I like the point of talking about the adrenaline. You said you don't like being in the common and you're stuck in the uncommon. You like doing things that are not normal. And, like all you guys and me to a point, this is, I think it might be a little bit harder for people in these real high flying positions because we live in adrenaline. And that's what the point you were making, Shaun, I think was that, I go to work and I just wait for the radio to go off and it might be the call that's like going to be the big one, right? And you guys are always, when you're on tour, you just never know. It's always unknown. It's a crazy thing. And you get built up living through all of these super high flying situations that require you to sit inside anxiety. And then the hard transition for me is realizing that everything's going to be less stimulating than it used to be at my job. So that's like a hard transition that I have to, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Clay. Like you're still you, but there's a part of you that you have to kind of retrain to work, not because there's bullets flying at you and that, you have to make a split-second decision right now. There's a Clay that has to do something different than that, right?
Well, exactly right. But I think actually one of the very exciting things about what you're talking about right there is, and I've seen this now because, because of the way I got retired, I actually did that about 5 years ahead of my peer group. So it wasn't until about 5 years later, and now here recently also, I started having friends retire because they've reached their end of service. And so I've kind of been like the coach for helping them out. Because while they're not doing exactly the same thing, they're still giving up the job. And actually, a lot of them did it longer now. So it's kind of a piece of them longer. And so a lot of us have been going through exactly what you're talking about there over different periods of time. But I think one of the actual best things about what's going on right now with what you're talking about, the adrenaline, that kind of thing, is realizing that the damage to your nervous system that living that kind of lifestyle did, and then the treatments, the new therapies that are out that are doing just insanely awesome things with being able to like reset that stuff and that anxiety that you felt for like the whole time you're doing. Because that's totally normal. Like you're gonna shot out, do weird shit stuff. You're gonna have an anxiety thing in your body. Yeah. Between ketamine shots and some of these nerve stimulations and stuff, I mean, I think where we're going for this in the future is actually going to help a lot of people out.
Yeah. There's some amazing new treatment therapies out there. One of them actually kind of goes into what we were talking about. Last year, we did a thing called Operation Pegasus Jump, and got a whole bunch of vets together and first responders and threw them out of a plane. Good times. And I had never jumped before. I wanted to while I was in the military. Never got the opportunity.
That was your first time.
That was my first jump. So, yeah, it was a control jump.
Witness it.
It's how I actually got my nickname Big Bird, and I'll explain the story in a second. But the hard transition and the thing that I loved about what Shaun was saying earlier is the fact it's similar to the transition when you're jumping out of a plane, right? Everything in your head is screaming, why? Like, no, you're in the plane. Your feet are on the mats. Like, why would you step out into the middle of nowhere? Why? And then even then you take all those steps and you get out onto the strut and you step off of the wheel well and you're just hanging there. And again, everything in your body is saying, no, do not let go of this plane. Right? And so, but that's that hard transit. Same thing with the uniform. Right? You're sitting there just white knuckling that uniform going, no. And then eventually you have to go, okay, and just let it go. And then you're into a whole new world of unknown. And for me, when I let go of the plane, I tried to fly my way back in. I was like, try to get back in. So yeah, I got the nickname Big Bird from Shaun there, and it's stuck ever since. But I wanted to really talk about that because, you know, some of the best things that happen were on that jump, right? I let go. the chute opened, thankfully, because I was not paying attention like I should have been. And, I was in the midst of a freak out, and then I got to sit there, and we did it on Vancouver Island. So we're just like looking at the ocean and the mountains, and I'm just sitting there at 4,000 feet. Like, this is pretty amazing. This is pretty sweet. And then, the guy on the radio started barking at me like, left turn. I'm like, oh, right. Okay. I got stuff to do. But that's part of it. That adrenaline that you're going to feel leading up to that transition, that like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then having to let go and having to separate yourself, because you're not going to have a very good exit if you try and white knuckle that thing until your fingers bleed out, right? Because you're gonna flounder and flop, and you weren't ready to go to begin with. But if you actually go into it and you lead yourself into it, where you let go on purpose and you arch and you do the count and you actually work the system, you work through the process, then it's a really enjoyable time. Any thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things. Two things. One is trying to, as we are kind of discussing, is normalizing the abnormal, which is where I like to spend most of my life. And so, to the point, the idea that sometimes I require, in order to actualize, and so Clay, I was mentioning in my live chat, which is what is being referenced, is a podcast by Dr. Art Finch, which is called The Psychological Profile of an Operator, which came out just recently, 68-minute long podcast. Fascinating.
Yeah.
You might really enjoy listening to that cool. Podcast. It might just watch it. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Or listen to it. And so as part of that discussion, he was talking about how special operators, or people who are special, for lack of a better term, we require a certain amount of arousal in order to engage in whatever the task is in front of us, the problem, the puzzle, the whatever. And so because we have low anxiety to some degree on the task, rather than flinching or panicking 45 seconds out from when the thing has to get done, it's a non-factor for us. We're actually yawning because we've still got 45 seconds. Whereas everyone's spooling up and running around like chickens with their head cut off. We're just all chillaxed until about 44 seconds later, when it's actually going to become a thing. And once we know it's going to become a thing, then that quick arousal, and then we're engaged, and then it's full steam ahead. And that's why sometimes, as Jason, as we're talking about, procrastination is a real crusher. So, because if it's boring, I'm going to procrastinate against it because it doesn't give me enough arousal to engage in it. And so I'm just going to walk past whatever needs to be done that is yawnerific. And I'm going to go look for something to go smash because that gives me enough arousal that I'll engage at 100%. So because of that, what I've had to do is gamify my life. So the stuff that's super boring that I would procrastinate against, I've got to flip the script on it and turn it into a game where it's challenging. So, I got to take out the garbage. I take out the garbage every week. No big deal. I've never missed a garbage day. But what do? I look at that garbage and it's like yawnerific. I don't want to do it because, like, what's up? Groundhog Day? Here I go. So I've got to turn it into a game. So it's all about little tweaks, little vectors, little scripts that I run against it to amuse myself, to gain enough arousal that I'm like, oh yeah, I can do it a bit faster. Oh yeah, I can, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what vector I apply against it. I've got to apply something against it to gamify it, to get the arousal out of it, to engage in it properly so I can smash it at 100% effort, whatever that means. And so most of my life I've had to gamify because the normal world bores me. I need the abnormal world. And if it's not abnormal enough, then it's my responsibility to abnormalize it enough so that I can crush all of it on the regular, even the boring stuff. So that's my first point. The second point is the hard transitions and how to normalize the ebbs and flows of things. Well, I'll say this again, it's my 7th transition. I can look back at all of those transitions, my first one being the military and then tier 1, etc. I wouldn't change a freaking thing. all of those transitions have made me what I am today. I can look back on my first version of Shaun, Generation 1.0, as Generation 7.0 and think, yeah, wasn't bad. But where I'm standing right now, oh yeah, it's good. Because I've got 7 Shauns in me. I've got a super complex, nuanced, rich, higher performing Shaun than if I would have just stayed in Generation 1.0. And so I think transitions are a gift rather than a curse. But you got to invert the script. You've got to think of it as a present rather than as a jail sentence. And so it's our job, just like I'm trying to do right now. It's our job to encourage others to step into the transition with excitement rather than with trepidation.
That is a fantastic point. I think Jocko says this all the time, or it's on the Origin site a lot, is we get to do this. And just that verbiage, we get to do this. I actually used it. I was shoveling not only my driveway, but my next door neighbor's driveway. And, it's cold. My fingers hurt. And I'm shoveling somebody else's driveway. And, this is tiring and blah, blah, blah. And I had to stop and go, you know what? I get to do this. This is what I wanted. I wanted my own house with my own driveway, with my garage, with my blah, 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 blah. I get to do this. And you just switch it up. Bang. Now it's fun. Now I can how high can I toss this snow? How far can I get it into the...
That's right? Gamifying.
And you got to... It is all about the mindset. The physical side of it it's not really all that hard, the physical stuff. But the mind plays tricks, right? If you let it.
Yeah, and that's...
go ahead, Jason.
That's kind of like the existential look at your life, is that I heard Steve Harvey do the same thing. And he talks about changing the word got to get. And it's such an important thing because I think that falls into the category of gratitude. And so it's, for me, as a way of looking at my career, instead of thinking that it's been poisoned by PTSD, it's like I got this great opportunity to be a policeman for 18 plus years. And now I get to do something else. And when I hear it, like you said, Chance, when you hear it flipped like that one letter changes the script. And it's like, man, this is opportunity. This isn't the end of my life. This is a chance to do something else. And Shaun, to your point, you say you got 7 Shauns now. Well, hard transitions kind of are like depth of experience, aren't they? You talked about that a few podcasts ago. So you're adding to your character and you're adding to your own resume, and it's creating this depth of person that you have with all this extra experience. All of a sudden you are gaining wisdom. And I think that's what you can take from hard transition. Man. Yeah. That's, it's been an opportunity for me as well. I say that with a grain of salt because you can't take every bad thing that's happened and, existentially turn it around in some kind of special meaning. But, having PTSD and having to transition into a new career has shown me all kinds of strength and depth of character that I never thought I had before. And so there's a hard transition, and there's probably lessons in every single one that we have in life.
Absolutely.
Does also not surviving it, surviving the experience that you had, does not give you the strength to maybe help somebody else out through that same type of transition. Can you say that? Not think of it as, this was a gift for me because I could take it, and now I can help somebody else with that same thing.
Yeah, there's if you've not read this book, it's called Man's Search for Meaning.
I have not
heard of that. Viktor Frankl. It's
yeah.
Probably one of the best books I've ever read. And he says that same thing. You find meaning in your trauma or your struggle, and you can turn it around and help somebody. Then you win, right? You just won the game,
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so if it took me getting to really dark mental depths to save somebody else, because now I can just have a voice and be a supportive person, and I've been able to rescue one other person, then it was all worth it, right? It's like,
right.
Yeah, I'll take that hard transition any day. I'd never regret any moment of it because I've actually been able to do that now. So you're absolutely right.
We, Shaun and I, we were talking about this a little while ago, was taking the weight, right? When you're on a ruck march or you're on a long patrol or something like that, and somebody starts to struggle, well, you've been through it. Okay, cool. I know what struggle's like. Let me take one of the pouches off your pack. Let me take something. Give me the mortar tube or whatever. Like you can if you can take that weight and then carry it forward for the team, for everybody else. And nowadays, this is the best part, is that the team is everybody, right? It's your circle. You get to help and assist and build this really solid tribe with whoever you want. It's no longer just who was dropped into your into report in that day, right? No, now, okay, we're going to work together with that guy. Awesome. Great. Now I get to work with my family. Now I get to work with my friends. Now I get to work with all the people that I know. And there's a great line circling around the internet, and it was all like, let your story of struggle be someone else's survival guide.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's totally righteous.
And I always loved that line. But absolutely, why wouldn't you want to, right? Why not lay the tracks for the next generation? Why not set it up? And during my transition, when I came out of the military, I really struggled with accepting anything from the VA, right? They would, oh yeah, there's these programs and there's these programs and we can get you this and just fill out this pattern of life form and how are you feeling, all that stuff. And I was lying through my teeth. I was like, yeah, I'm good. Same, that military mindset. Yeah, no, we're good. I'm good. I'm solid. No problems. Until my wife was like, you do realize that generations of veterans fought the government specifically for this thing that you're now rejecting because you don't think you deserve it, or you don't think you earned it, or you don't think that whatever. And then I was like, yeah, I guess. And then it was like, but then again, nowadays it's like $300 extra a month for into the disability portion of it. I'm like, extra $300. That's a pretty nice little benefit, right? So yep. We do this to ourselves, where we will physically limit what we are willing to take, or what type of help is available to us, or whether or not we accept the concepts that other people are talking about as well. So another struggle. You guys have any issues with that one?
I do. I'd like to throw this in, just because it might be a little bit of a unique twist. Maybe not. I'm not that unique. So when I bounced out of Tier 1, I did no paperwork. I didn't even know there was paperwork to do. I didn't know there was a thing called Veterans Affairs. I had no idea, honestly. It's only been recently that I learned there's a thing called Veterans Affairs. So the quick story is this, that when I bounced, I was having nightmares and all the good stuff. And I went through a couple of decades of nightmares. Every freaking night, my sleep was trash and etc. And so what I didn't realize is I had PTSD, because when I left the teams, there was no such word as PTSD. And so many years later, my wife's sister said, hey, how was your sleep? And again, I'm going to compress the story. I eventually said, yeah, because I have nightmares every night. What? That's not normal. And I looked at her and I said, what do you mean it's not normal? And so again, a long story short, talked to my family doctor, talked to a psychiatrist, talked to the people, talked to Veterans Affairs, talked to blah, 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 got the process going. As it turns out, I had PTSD for a long, long time, which I didn't know. And so here's the news for anyone else. That's why I've told that tiny little story. Over a long period of time, through all of those transitions, I found a way. I found a way to work through the stuff that I didn't even know that I had to work through. And so when the psychiatrist looked at me in the eye and said, hey, Shaun, I'm going to tell you what the results are of our time spent together. Here's my report. And she said, you've got significant PTSD. And I said, what? And she said, you've got PTSD. And I did this. Process, good. And she looked at me and she said, what do you mean good? And I said, good, because now I know what it is. That's what it's called. And she said, well, what does that even mean? I said, well, now that I know what it is, I'm going to go smash it. And she said, how? And I said, I'm going to learn. I'm going to read. I'm going to research. I'm going to do. I'm going to counter it. That's what I've been doing ever since that psychiatrist said, hey, Shaun, you got PTSD. There's a way out of it. Maybe not like totally, but there's a way forward. Mm-hmm. I forged my way. My way is my way. And my way isn't the same as everyone else's way, but I forged my way ahead. It's a process, and it ain't going to happen overnight. But every night that slips by that I got extra sleep was a good night. And so night after night after night, here I am in front of a freaking microphone talking to the internet about my little story, in hope that someone out there will understand that irrespective of whatever's going on in the past, today is a good day to address what's bugging you. Take it on, full tilt, smash it right in the throat punch, and get on with your day, whatever that means to you. Do better today. And if you just build around doing your best, whatever that means to you in some tiny way, build off it tomorrow. And eventually, in time, you'll be kicking ass.
Yeah. You know, I feel the same way. I was really relieved when my family doctor finally said, "Oh, I think you've got PTSD." Because then it was like, all right, I'm not insane. You know, the things that I'm experiencing, like physically and mentally, are not, fabrics of my imagination, that I'm not bipolar or some weird thing. So then it gave me an opportunity, just like you said, Shaun. It's like, okay, how do I make a roadmap forward to defeat this, to get over it, right? Which is what I've been doing now for the last 14 months as I transition from, we're talking about hard transitions. This is my hard transition right now. I'm living it, is transitioning from a psychological label that I've put on myself as I have PTSD to, okay, well, no, I'm a human being dealing with something, and I've got to move forward out of it instead of remaining in the label, because you get stuck in the label. And I felt that at the first beginning of it, where, I was sort of perpetuating my own victimhood by saying I have PTSD. Well, what do you mean I have? I don't have it. I don't carry it around. It's not in my pocket. It's still me. And I'm have this opportunity now to figure it out, to get stronger and create some tools to help me in the future. So you're right. You got to
gamify it, baby.
You got to look at it and say, like you said, I didn't say it in those words in my head. I don't have that level of intensity like you do, Shaun. Like, I'm going to go and throat punch my PTSD. But in a way, I did it in my own
Listen,
way.
I'm not recommending it to everyone. I'm just saying this is how I'm wired. I'm abnormal, maybe. I don't know. But I think it's a fun play on words, throat punch PTSD. But I think that's kind of what it takes to some degree, whatever that means to everyone else out there. My version of throat punch is literally throat punching. But someone else's version might be just getting up 1 minute earlier that day and cleaning up their room for a minute. And then that's an awesome day. That's an awesome throat punch. Throat punch your dirty room. And tomorrow build off that. So my way is my way. Everyone else has got their own way. The idea being that you recognize whatever it is that you've got to go smash today. And smash means a lot of things to a lot of people. To me, what it means is make it better. Don't be owned by it. Own it.
That's a great thought. Clay, any thoughts?
Throat punch PTSD would make an awesome T-shirt. I'm calculating in my mind right now.
Yeah, that would be pretty awesome. It reminds me, when I don't throat punch PTSD. I'm not a throat puncher on a regular basis, but I always likened it to training a horse or training a dog or training really any animal. Is that you ignore the bad and you reward the good. So when you do something that is good, that helps you better your day, or you manage a situation better than you did yesterday, like, sweet, that was awesome. That's what I want to do. Cool. Check. Good. And if something bad happens, I have a flashback in the driving down the highway or something like that. Okay, done. It's over. Move on. Like, I recognize it. I manage it in the moment. Whether I managed it well or if I didn't manage it well, then I say, okay, I didn't manage that well. Move on to the next session. Because once you feed into that negativity, then that negativity grows. But if
I just want to be a little pedantic now.
Pedantic?
I'm just gonna tease out the nuance of words, because words matter.
Let's hit it
to some
degree.
Absolutely. And so, and this is gonna build off of a point that I thought about making a little earlier in the conversation, and that is how adrenaline is good. I like adrenaline. Adrenaline is a fuel. I've learned how to use adrenaline as a scalpel in my day-to-day. But I also understand the impact of the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the adrenaline, HPA axis, and how, cortisol and adrenaline and blah, 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 all the good stuff, the neurochemicals that rule us on the daily. Our mind creates the neurochemicals that are going to create what our real time is. And so all of these have cost. And so I know how I'm wired. I like to throat punch, but I also know the thing that I don't like to do, and that is shut up. And so that's what I've been talking about in the sense of meditation. I don't like to think of the word as I'm going to go out and get my meditation on. Namaste. Namaste doesn't work for me, but what does work is making it a little bit difficult on myself by gamifying it. So what do I do when I'm out smashing a ride out on the single track here in my town? At some point, I'll stop, sit on a tree stump, and shut up. That's what I call meditation. Just shut up, Shaun. And I don't mean talking, I mean talking. And so I try to get right to the core of the state of no mind. However long I can hold it, I gamify it. And if I slip in and out of it, I'll gamify it. And when I'm done gamifying, I'll jump back on my bike and punch. And so I like getting after it. The things that I don't like to do is the stuff where I feel like I'm not moving forward and I'm not accomplishing anything, or I'm actually existing. To me is difficult, but I know that that's what's super important, is just existing with no churning. And so go embrace the stuff that is really difficult. The stuff that is easy for me is throat punching. The stuff that's difficult is sitting and shutting up. But that's the stuff that I need the most. So that is the game for me, is to challenge myself, not doing the exciting, quote unquote, easy stuff for me, the stuff that I like to do. My game is trying to do the stuff that I don't like to do more often than the things I like to do. So to your point, Chance, if you find yourself, not you, anyone, I'll generalize. If anyone out there is having that ebb and flow of, man, sometimes thoughts enter my mind that are super negative, and I try to keep them at bay, or I try to move through them a little bit, and I feel that, oh, that's enough, and I'm going to move back into the positive world, move away from Darth Vader, move towards Obi-Wan Kenobi. I gamify that. I'm if I'm getting uncomfortable, guess what? I'm scrabbling down that rabbit hole to get more uncomfortable, because I'm throat punching myself, because that's the way I'm wired, baby. I love the heat. I love the intensity of the challenge. And I don't want to, again, I'm not recommending this for everyone. I don't want the mediocre feed. I want the maximum effort feed. But I'm used to that, and it's not for everyone. And so you've got to calibrate. You've got to ease your way into it, and whatever intensity level you can accept in the way of heat. I like heat. So if there's something that is bugging me, guess what? I'm going to go throat punch it. Maybe it's throat punching me, but I'll figure it out in the heat. I won't step away from heat, positive or negative. I'll always engage in it to the deepest level.
Well, that's a great point. Any thoughts? Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think what you've learned, and what I'm just learning now, it's kind of sad that it's taken this long, but Shaun, what you know that a lot of people don't know is that growth comes in discomfort. And so if you constantly live in the comfort zone, then you can't really hard transition or soft transition, because you get stuck in that zone, right? Like, the reason why I think it's been so hard for me is because after 18 years of policing, even though it's a pretty intense career, I was comfortable in there. I was comfortable living in constant adrenaline. I was comfortable, constantly living in the negativity and the difficulty of my job. And the hard transition is trying to do something that's adventurous in a different way. And stepping out of the comfort zone and doing the hard thing, that's no different than the person who's been bedridden who finally puts their feet on the ground for the first time after 2 months. That's uncomfortable for them. That's outside of their comfort zone, but that's where they grow. Like for you, you want to smash throats all the time because that gets you out of your comfort zone, because now you're doing the hard thing. I'm not throat punching people yet, but I've learned that. I've just started to learn that. And it's a thing that too many people don't recognize, I think, is that comfort will kill you. And that the only way for your body and your mind to really move forward is to be in outside of the comfort zone, is to do the hard things. And I think that's where you can make a hard transition, a soft transition, is by accepting that part of it, is by accepting that you have to do the hard thing and that there will be a reward because you'll grow.
Yeah, 100%. Clay, any thoughts? Any thoughts?
That's a wild way to look at it. I'm absorbing Shaun's methodology there. I don't know, man. I guess I do it a different way. I'm a lot more like you, where if the negativity comes up, like I'm not going to chase it down the rabbit hole necessarily. I dissect it. I look at it and I take my scalpel out. I'm like, why do I feel bad about this? Or what is the thing that's making me feel negative? And then I excise it and I throw it away. And then I step back onto the good path. And that's simplifying things a lot. It takes, it's a longer process sometimes, but that's how I look at it. So I don't chase the dark dreams down the rabbit hole. I only go far enough that I can cut them out.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good.
Well, that's the beautiful part about people. We all get to figure ourselves out and what works best for us. The best part of this conversation is that we're shedding some light on a variety of different ways to approach this. There is no one singular way. And so I guess what we're encouraging people to do is see that there's 4 different people here who manage things 4 different ways, maybe not radically different, but different in enough degrees that it should illustrate that we've all found our own unique ways to manage it, and they're all unique, but they're all heading towards the same outcome, which is a positive outcome. And so I think the other advantage that I have right now in this panel is I'm turning 60 this year. And so, when I figured most of this stuff out? After I was 50. So I've got a bit of a artificial advantage on you guys. You're probably much further ahead in your path than I was when I was your age. So when you hit my age, man, I'm going to feel like an underperformer.
As you should. There's actually a, I've mentioned this on my other podcast a number of times, but there's a movie and it's called Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. I'm sure. No, it's an animated movie. It's fun. It's about a horse. But there's a key line in it. And in the moment they're talking about the breaking of a horse or building of a nation. And it's set kind of post U.S. Civil War, that kind of time period. So this cavalry commander is talking to his troops and he's just talking about when you break a horse, there's 3 things that you need: time, patience, and discipline. And these are the 3 great levelers, is what he says. And I'm like, that is so true, because in anything that you want, if you want to get better, if you want to make a transition, if you want to be Radmaster 9000, as Shaun likes to put it, World Championship macrame, any of those things, those are the 3 things you need: time, patience, discipline, and you will achieve whatever it is you're going after. And if that is getting through a hard transition, so be it. Time, patience, discipline.
Can I add just a quick point? Then
Absolutely, you can
step away from this mic so our guests can bring the wisdom. I'm here for their wisdom. So those 3 things are important, but I hope in that movie at some point someone identified why those 3 things are important. Because what are we talking about? We're talking about identifying what the outcome is that we're driving towards. And that is, we'll call it breaking a horse. So you can have all those 3 things, but unless you are clear on what you're trying to accomplish, guess what gets accomplished? Freaking nothing. You can have all the time, all of the blah, 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 all the good stuff, and your day's still going to be Groundhog Day unless you identify what you're putting those 3 resources against and then hammering it, throat punching it. And so is the overarching theme. Before you start doing any of that stuff, figure out why you're doing it and then go and do it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Jason, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I did. I think it was Friedrich Nietzsche that said something like that. You give a man a why and he can do almost any how. So if you have a reason and a purpose, then it seems like you can really jump in feet first and giver. And I mean, think about this as just a, your normal day-to-day life. How many times has somebody said to you, go do this? And the first thing's out of your mouth, why? Why am I doing that? They explain it to you, then okay, well, that makes sense now, right? Or
sometimes.
Well, sometimes, yeah, in the policing end, I'm sure.
Well, at least it creates a conversation.
It does, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's almost like you need to be purpose-driven in order to see the right path, right? You have to have decided what that purpose or your reason for moving forward is.
100%. I think it goes into what we were saying earlier, right? You get to, right? When you have the why, when you actually understand the why, then you get to do it. Whereas if you don't understand the why, then you have to do it. Then you got to do it.
I swear this is the last time I'll be on the mic until we wrap up. I swear. That's it. This is the very last thing before we wrap up.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it is important to be purpose-driven. It is important to have a why. That's why I'm in front of this freaking microphone. My why is to try to, do it better for the team, and that's my point. Sometimes knowing what your why is will get you towards the outcome. But you know what's super powerful is doubling down. Know your why for you, but know your why for the team around you. So always keep in mind the why, that it's for everyone else around you, more so usually than it is for you. And if you can parallel those two things, now you can throat smash.
Any thoughts, Clay? You got the little.
This is actually how I live my life. This is my thinking face.
Okay.
Yeah. No, man, that's great. No, I'm fucking totally with it. Oh, okay. There I go again. I did it again. Sorry.
That's 2. After 3, we're done.
Next time I'm on, you're gonna put me on the 30-second delay. Like, this is just it's a good policy.
Yeah.
3 strikes and you turn into some weird avatar on the screen for
right, Papa Smurf for a little bit.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to come up with some sort of little GIF or some sort of image that I can play on your screen, and it'll just be like a little smoke bomb, and then you'll disappear completely. That's my magic for later. Yeah, Jace?
This might be way different for me because I'm a policeman, so I'm home almost every night, but that's another part of a hard transition that I found while I was working in my career that probably a lot of people right now would find that the hard transition is at the end of the day too. So, like, Clay, I don't know if you're still are you still active?
No. I've been retired for almost 10 years now.
Like, I know it's different for military personnel because you're very often you're on base or you're away on mission for huge extended periods of time. Whereas for me, I transition every day. I put my uniform on in the morning, and most often I'm home at night. And I got to remember that I'm Jay and I'm a husband and a dad as soon as the uniform comes off. And I struggled with that too. I'm not sure if you guys felt that.
Oh yeah, dude. There's actually there's a huge psychological study actually on the difference even between this war and like World War II, Korea, Vietnam, any of those things, especially World War II, where the average time to get home from a combat zone was like 45 days across the Atlantic, across the Pacific for those of us in North America. For this war for us, it could be like a 16-hour plane ride, 18 hours maybe. Yeah, you could have literally been like getting it on yesterday, and now you wake up at your house. And that has made things extremely weird for us. So for the for you guys from the police world to like literally come home and like put the badge down, 5 minutes later you're a different dude. Yeah, that has to be extremely difficult actually, and that probably takes a toll that like the rest of us don't really get.
Yeah, there's less of a decompression, I think, from going to. I can remember one particular incident. Without much details, but we had a person who had been hit by a train. And so when we were done the investigation, there was me and 2 other officers that went and put body parts in a bag. And then I went home at night and did life with my family. And you don't realize that that's a hard transition, man. Like, you're going from some pretty wild looking stuff on a lower level to now you're at home hugging your children and having dinner at the dinner table. Yeah. You guys could be doing some crazy operation, and then you get back and you're integrating into a society that's different than what you're used to for months and months on end, eh?
Yeah, for real.
I've talked to a few policemen about this as well, and the one thing that I basically have come up with is like when we're on tour, we're somewhere else.
Yeah.
When you guys are working, you're always on tour, right? Your backyard is technically you're back in the field. Your front yard, you're back in the field. The moment you leave that house, you are in the field. And even then, when you're at your house, the mindset's still there, right? When I did my HLTA, my leave during tour, I had 3.5 months in done a bunch of fighting, IEDs, all blah blah blah, all that good stuff. Jumped on a plane, went home, but I was only home for like 3 weeks, and then I went right back. And so I had like a little stint of, now I'm home and I'm not here, and this place was weird, but now home is weird, and now I'm back where I was kind of comfy. And then I came home afterwards, but there was a decompression and stuff like that. Whereas a lot of police officers, firefighters, EMS, like the people that wander around the city and meet people on their absolutely worst day, they never leave. They just stay there. Similar to, you know, the ANA and the Afghans and the Iraqi soldiers who, you know, they were fighting every day and then they just went home. And then they woke up the next morning and they're back at it.
Yeah.
And I think the transitionary thing is still, I think the process is the same. It's just we don't get taught how to do that. We just kind of assume like, oh yeah, they'll be good. Right? Oh, this guy's going to go on vacation. See you later. We'll see you when you get back. Awesome, have fun. And you show up back at home and you're like, what is this place? Like, so it's a major transition. That's why I want to talk about it too, is, you know, when Clay brought it up, I was like, this is something we haven't really dived into specifically on those snap transitions. So I'm really thankful you guys were able to come on here and actually talk about this. And we're about 3.5 minutes off from our hour. So let's wrap her up. Any final thoughts? Jason, I'm going to throw you on the fire. Any final thoughts on transitioning, hard transitioning, anything at all?
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that this isn't something that's taught, because I think it's a massively important point. The hard transition from shift to not working, and the hard transition from either voluntarily or you know, medically being released from a job. It really takes a lot of self-analysis to recognize, like Shaun said, that it's not the end of days. It's just you've had an opportunity, and then you said, like you said, Shaun, and I think Clay, you also mentioned this, like, this is an opportunity now. Like, I get to do something different, and that's not taught to us. So, you know, at the end of your tour, at the end of your career, you walk out the door and you hang your uniform up, and then it's like you're completely exposed and naked. And if you haven't done that self-analysis, if you haven't prepared for it, I think it can be hard, and it's something that's missing. Definitely in the policing world, it's missing. You know, that day-to-day, like, go home and be a husband and a father and leave your uniform. You can't really, but you still need to do it mentally to live and survive. And it's something that is, I think, very important for young recruits to learn, is to have an adaptation to that and know what to do.
Yeah. I heard a really good one, actually. A friend of mine, he said he would come into the house through his garage. And he would walk into the garage and he'd take his uniform off in the garage and he'd put his clothes on in the garage. And then when he walked into the house, he was no longer the police officer. He was him.
Yeah.
And then when he would leave, same thing. And it allowed him to give him that transition. Any final thoughts there, Clay, on anything we talked about?
Yeah, I think especially in keeping like a positive positive mindset outlook that we're looking for this, it really goes back to your airplane thing too. When that transition is happening, all right, I find it's easy for a lot of people to just want to hang on to it as tight as they can. And then even when they're kind of out the door, to like hang on as that used to be person. Mm-hmm. Whereas taking a minute and deciding that that's over and done now, and I'm going to keep the positive parts, whatever, but I'm going to be this other person now, or I'm going to become this other thing now, whatever that might be. You could be a retired dude that sits on the couch. It's fine. I've been taking a minute to accept that and also look at that as an opportunity is I believe what's going to help you with those hard transitions.
Yeah, 100%. Shaun, any final thoughts? You're allowed to come back to the mic now that we're just
thanks, boys. I'll not wrap it up, but I'll add these final thoughts in the sense of This is a really important conversation. As I sat back, listened to it, as I was engaging in, and I'm agreeing with y'all in the sense it's so important, but it isn't often talked about. Nobody's giving this lecture in the recruit classes. Nobody's giving this lecture in the 10 years into the game class. Just no one's giving it. If it, at least not this way, as I see it. Now, maybe there's a bunch of podcasts out there or a bunch of whatever lectures or courses or Sigma International 3-day long courses that teach you how to manage this stuff better. I don't know. I haven't bumped into it. This is the first conversation that I've heard it openly discussed. So for that, thank you, fellers. And so the last piece I'll add is at Generation 7.0 right now, I'm looking forward to seeing what Generation 8.0 is. Dude, it's a freaking Christmas present that is yet to be unwrapped. And when it shows up on my front door, I'll throw punch it and then unwrap it. And so don't ever be scared to step into the void of new, because new is awesome.
That's a great way to end it. So thanks again, Jason, Clay, for being here. Awesome. Shaun, always a pleasure hanging out with you. I think today, not especially, we've talked about some awesome stuff, but I've learned some things. I've definitely been able to build upon the tools that I have, and I've been able to grow completely as a veteran, as a human, as an energy being on a flying rock, hurtling through the solar system. I've been able to do quite a bit. So if you'd like to continue this whole transition of becoming a stronger, faster, better person, make sure you like and you subscribe and you hit the notification bell so you can join us every day here on The Collective as we learn, build, and grow. We'll talk to you all tomorrow. Gmo.